In the second half of chapter 9, they began talking about an economic form of or system or a practice. Before I say talk about redistribution, I'll just say that forms of reciprocity, redistribution, and market capitalism are present in all societies, or present now in all societies. So these are not cleanly separate items. What we call redistribution depends upon a centralization of goods and services. So, what happens is you have certain things flowing into a central place or a central person, or you have some form of tribute in which people give things so that things get concentrated in one place. And then the redistribution happens where they are put out in new patterns. Now, that doesn't mean everybody gets an equal share. It just means that things are going into one place and then somebody or some system is putting them back out into the economy, but in a different pattern than what was originally in there. So, examples from today. So, examples from contemporary life are taxation. So, coming up on April 15th, you or your parents might be grumbling about sending taxes into the federal government. That grumble is real because a lot of that then just goes to the military. But hopefully, at least some of that goes to things like old people and schools and roads and education. Oh, I said schools, hospitals, something. We hope it does. Hopefully, let's just do the optimistic one. Libraries and schools and hospitals and roads and those kinds of things. That's what we pay our taxes for because collectively, it's very difficult to build a road on a market system. So we do this thing called taxation, where then we have somebody else deciding that, yes, we should all have an airport and we should pay people to check us through. They've gotten that almost worked out now. Food banks might be another example. Sometimes people donate to, or the people will come around and collect. Things are coming into a central place. You're not going to get the food back that you donated. It's supposed to go to people who have a need for food. So, this is a different system or a different idea from reciprocity, which, if you remember, is a give and take between two individuals or a set of people, and a market system in which things are bought and sold for money. And so you might give your labor for money, you have a job, and with that money, you can buy things at stores. This is a slightly different system in which resources flow into one place and then they come out in a different way. The palace economy of Mycenaean Greece or Mesopotamia, they give you this diagram, useful items going back and forth. What do we have here? We have grain going up, so people would contribute grain and simple cloth and animals, and then you get a big feast back in return. Yay! So you bring things in and then they go back. You'd have textiles going one way and rations going the next. Whole system of wool and animals. There's a whole system of redistribution here in which the palace function as a way of storing things, and you get stuff back in a different form, because unless everybody contributes to the feast, you can't have a feast. It's a way of amplifying your resources. Maybe somebody got mad here and didn't think they were getting as much for their taxes as they wanted, but it seemed to make people happy. I'm going to pronounce this Cahokia, but who knows how they would have said it because it was named way after the people had come and gone. Had anybody heard of Cahokia before this? It's one of the greatest archaeological sites in the United States. It's just a little bit of a road trip away. There are some very cool mounds there that you can go see. We don't care about mounds too much in this country, so we've just put a highway in there and a golf course. No, I'm serious. It's embarrassing. You're trying to look at these mounds and people are driving by. This was at one point in time probably the largest urban or largest concentration of people. Some people think as many as 50,000 might have lived in and around here, and they had huge festivals and things like that and ritual ceremonies. Although there's some indication that people got really mad and burned the whole place down and fled it eventually. But sometimes the people who are at the top of the redistribution get in trouble. By the time the Europeans came, this place had been completely abandoned and people were living in different ways. But it's a cool site. We have a lot of cool archaeological sites and things in this country that very few people know about. Get a chance, go down there and check it out. You can see things like this cool tablet of things. As we go along, they talk about more contemporary forms of redistribution. So they talk about post-colonial redistribution, which comes to us from various countries that had been colonized and subjected to extractive systems of exploitation. This is a picture of Queen Elizabeth dancing with the president of Ghana, which caused a little bit of a stir at the time. But as countries declared independence and became free from the colonizers, they often tried different kinds of redistribution economies. Some of them worked better than others. In many different societies, people end up mixing these ideas of reciprocity, capitalism, and redistribution. So that's what they talk about here, about the idea of food sovereignty, or in Cuba, how they prioritized, you pay a lot in taxes, but then they give you rations or a way to get food, and your education is free. They ended up producing, for example, a lot of doctors in Cuba and sending doctors into all different parts of Latin America and the world. As you may know, right now we have decided that we are not letting Cuba have anything. They're under a naval blockade and their hospitals have no electricity. So it's sometimes very difficult to do these kinds of things because other people get mad at you if you deviate from the capitalist economy. So in their textbook, it talks about different ideas about from the capitalist economy, what they call moral economies, which are based on shared justice norms, economic practices that uphold the justice norms, and mechanisms of social pressure. So in other words, the idea that you shouldn't just be able to, in this case, this is a protest about water and the fact that the water system had been privatized. It was too expensive for people to even afford the water that they were getting charged for. The idea is that there are certain things like food and water and education and healthcare which should not be provided by the market system, which should be accessible to all. And that forms the idea of a moral economy. There are other systems within capitalism which also are a form of redistribution. So instead of taking a loan out of the bank, for example, let's say you wanted to start a business or you needed to do something or you had something coming up. So you have a group of people and they all pay in a certain amount. And then you rotate it around so that you get a chance to have that money and to do something big with it. Textbook also mentions different ways in which people have tried to resurrect or revamp the idea of barter. So instead of using money, going back to some of these indigenous traditions in which people would trade things or animals for each other. So instead of using money as a form, you could use barter as a form to increase people's buying power. Similarly, the idea of worker cooperatives. That is, instead of having a company that is owned by one person or is a publicly traded company owned in the capitalist system, that the workers own the means of production. They're the ones who are owning it and managing it. Some of these have worked all right. Some of them have not done so well, but it's an interesting idea, and there are different examples of it in today's world. Then, one of my favorites, the idea of having community gardens. So instead of getting all your food from the supermarket or trying to grow your own food, you would have collective places that aren't owned by any one person, but could be planted by somebody. And these are something that happens in a lot of urban areas, more than we might think. So this is a map of community gardens in Washington, D.C., places where people are trying to come together and reclaim urban land or near urban land in order to make this system work. What this game proves is that even after 500 years of being told that we should economically maximize, and people play this game, we've used this game all over the world, people don't maximize. Why? Because we have an idea that things should be fair. Instead of maximizing our self-interest, we do place a value on fairness. And you probably would say if somebody said, I get 7 or 8 or 9, you'd be like, no, reject, I hate you. We're just going to go down together. When we play this, though, in different societies, we see different offers that are made and different ideas about fairness and who should offer what. Your textbook gives you the example of where they play this in different places. In some societies, if anybody goes low, they just reject it. Whereas in other societies, they'll take almost anything. The point here is that your cultural context shapes the idea of fairness and what is right to have.